You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast, of course, brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports wagering partner of CLNS Media. Go to FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up today. And today, it's your boy, Pat Lane, as always, with my guy, Matt St. Jean. And today, we're finally doing the crossover event that somehow we haven't done yet. We used to be at Pats Pulpit, everyone knows. Brian Hines is still at Pats Pulpit, crushing it over there as the main Patriots reporter over there, and he's finally on the show with us. It's long overdue, but we're happy to have you here, Brian. It's great to see you, and thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is way too overdue, but happy to be here and finally getting this one checked out.
That's right. So big, semi-big week of news, of course. It was funny because Matt was saying we didn't have the show on Thursday because of the interview that I had with Matt Hamashek, which is out now on YouTube if you haven't seen it, about the dynasty. And Matt said, he's like, they're 100% the Patriots are going to announce the offensive coordinator on Thursday. That's absolutely what's going to happen. Of course, it is what happened. And so we did not do a show yet. But, Brian, what are your thoughts? And Matt, we'll get yours afterwards. What are your thoughts on Alex Van Pelt? And if you want to expand to include Bob McAdoo in that as well, they've hired him since as well. What are your thoughts on those hires?
So I wasn't blown away by the hire. I mean, I think it took everyone by surprise, right? They had 11 candidates reportedly in here, and then all of a sudden Van Pelt comes in and gets the job. And there's pros and there's cons, and I think it's good that you get an experienced guy in here, right? You have a first-time head coach in Gerard Mayo. You have a first-time coordinator on defense and special teams. Did you really want a third coordinator that was brand new and has never done this before? Maybe not. So it's good to get a guy who's been in the league a long time, has experience doing this, has been to some successful offenses, obviously worked with Aaron Rodgers, had success with Baker Mayfield, had success with almost every quarterback that went through Cleveland last year, except Deshaun Watson, which is kind of funny, but yeah. So he's got the experience. He's worked with a lot of quarterbacks. You assume Patriots will have a young rookie quarterback for him to work with. But he's never really called plays either, which is, kind of weird. He
True.
Did it once. He did it with Buffalo in 2009. So we're talking 15 years ago almost. He did it for a game or two there when Kevin Stefanski had COVID. So I wouldn't call it a home run hire, but I think it's a good hire, and it definitely has the potential to kind of pan out here for them.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like it a lot. The whole not calling plays thing doesn't bother me that much. You look at some of the other trendy candidates. Zach Robinson, he's not a play caller. Kubiak from San Francisco, I know a lot of guys wanted him. He's not the play caller.
Right.
And, I think in an ideal world, you'd get that guy. But typically the play caller then ends up getting promoted to become the head coach. You're probably not getting a play caller there. And, you get a guy who's, like Brian said, he's steady, he's experienced, he's a veteran. From all accounts, he's a player's coach too. What we've seen with Bill O'Brien and Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels there, it's going to be a very different mindset offensively for these guys in practice. And
yes.
I think that'll be a good thing. We'll see. I don't know how good that's going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now, but year one, it's going to be a breath of fresh air for these guys. And, maybe that gets something out of some of these players that we hadn't seen before, just a different mental treatment of it. Watching some of the Cleveland film too, I really like the run game stuff they do. It's varied. They do everything. And they do a lot of misdirection stuff. And I think if you can get the best out of Cole Strange, he's a huge fit with what's done. I think Michael Onwenu is still a fit with what they've done. And it should make life easy on a rookie quarterback. The whole thing is basically we're going to run the ball as much as we can, use that to set up play action, and go to some spread West Coast stuff on third down when we need to pass the ball. And that's, Evan Lazar mentioned it in his article today. That's Drake May's music if you're looking at the quarterbacks at the top of this draft. But also, if you go further, if they're not enamored with a guy at the top, Bo Nix, I think, is capable of doing that in theory, at least. We're going to talk about what he did at the Senior Bowl this week. But he's a guy who did that in college. J.J. McCarthy is a guy who did that. And if you're looking for a bridge quarterback, too, you might be able to have a good offense here with a bridge quarterback because you're relying more on the run game while you wait for whoever your next franchise guy is.
Yeah, that's a good point. By the way, quick shout out to Thad's younger brother, 21st birthday today. Happy birthday to Thad's younger brother. But no, look, it's interesting. The Van Pelt thing is interesting. And you're right, Matt, that, you're not getting really a guy that calls plays. I mean, I don't think any of the guys they brought in for interviews have been real play callers. Now, of course, Josh McDaniels is on the table, but I'm happy they didn't bring McDaniels in. I didn't really want Josh McDaniels as the guy. I don't think Zach Robinson called plays in LA, right? Did he not?
No.
And so even him,
they had the floor, and then did McVay call plays for them? Like Robinson wasn't even the offensive coordinator there. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So, it's you weren't necessarily getting a guy that was calling plays. I do, but the fact that he was around and the fact that he's been there for a long time and he has a lot of experience, to me, that makes a big difference because Mayo's a young guy. Covington's a young guy. Jeremy Springer, who they hired as special teams coordinator, is a young guy. They're all young guys. You need someone with some seasoning and some experience in the league. And I think that Van Pelt gives you that. And look, is it all like high end? Like his team, his offense was top 5 in the league every year? No. But, look what he did this year with, a patchwork offense in Cleveland and, what he brought them to become. Now, again, not the offensive coordinator or not the play caller necessarily, but like you hear the way the guys in the locker room talk about him. I think that there was a clear shift for Mayo that he wanted this to be a culture. He wanted it to be, this is what we're going to do here, right? This is how we're going to feel here, right? This is like, the way that we're going to coach it. He has a specific thing that he wants to do. And I think Van Pelt fits into that thing. And it's funny, I mean, this is a different discussion for a different day, but I think that's part of the reason why Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel don't have jobs this year, because they're going towards that player-friendly coach. I mean, look around the league and look at how many of those guys are player-friendly guys. And Bill and Vrabel are loved by their players when they win, but they're hard asses. They're pains in the asses, right? That's just who they are, and that's successful for them.
And Vrabel's also tall.
Plays anymore. Well, Vrabel's tall, imposing guy. What a
too intimidating
that was, man.
That's got to be the funniest story to come out of this whole thing. It's funny because there's a lot of money to be made in studying football very religiously and analytically and finding out the best coaching hires, and then we find out the guys who are actually paid to make these decisions are not hiring guys because they're tall, and it makes you realize how different things are in the inside of the bubble than the outside.
Right. That's a good point. And you know what? TJ is asking a question about Steve Belichick and why he didn't stick around. And I think Mayo, made it pretty clear that they had asked him to stick around. They wanted him to stick around, but he didn't get the DC job that was given to Covington. And so when that happened, he went and looked elsewhere. And then the opportunity at University of Washington popped up to be a defensive coordinator there. And he took it. And I think that, I think his brother, Brian's sticking around is what it sounds like. At least Brian's sticking around. And so, I think Steve saw the opportunity to go and be a defensive coordinator at a big college program, hopefully build his resume a little bit there, and then work that into maybe a college head coach. Maybe he comes back to the NFL as a DC, but, kind of building up from there.
Yeah. I mean, I would have loved Steve back, right? I thought he did a really good job the last 4 or 5 years since he's been kind of that de facto play caller, defensive coordinator. But like, what's his role if he came back here? I know that associate head coach title was flown out there, but if you're giving play calling duties to DeMarcus Covington and then Steve gets an assistant head coach, like, is that a demotion or is that a promotion? Like, it's kind of just a weird kind of dynamic there. And then if things go bad for Covington, if the defense or people outside of the locker room going to start saying like, maybe we should give Steve the play calling duties back. So it might have been just kind of a weird setup, but I think he was a great coach, and I hope he does have a lot of success over in Washington, and that'll be fun to watch. Seems like that's been kind of a path where these defensive coordinators are finding success at the college level, so that'll be fun to watch Steve out there.
Yeah.
And that's with head coach Jed Fish, a guy who was recently in the building here in New England. Some familiarity there, and
Vinny Siri went with him.
Yep, that was what I was going to say next. Took the words right out of my mouth. So, boys are sticking together. They're just off to their college adventure now.
So who was because the head coach there left and took the job at
Alabama.
At Alabama, that's right. And then Fish was in Arizona, and he went to Washington, and now I'm like, I thought Jed Fish is in. See, I don't follow college football quite as much as. And I should have known that, right? But I'm like, Jed Fish, I know is in Arizona. And then people were like, he's going to Jed Fish. And I'm like, wait, wasn't he in Arizona? And
he
then
did
I
a great
remembered
job
that.
there, too.
He did a really nice job there. Yeah.
I completely forgot that Jed Fish took the Washington job. And when I saw that Steve Belichick was interviewing with Jed Fish, and then I saw the next day Steve Belichick taking the Washington job. And I was like, wait, how did he end up in Washington? Completely forgetting it. Life moves fast. I want to touch on this here too when we're talking about Van Pelt, going back to that. One of the things I thought was interesting with him is how creative he is as a play designer. He's the guy that does all of that, as far as I know, for Cleveland. Like, he does everything but call the plays on game day. And it doesn't take very long into the tape in this season to see a play where they're on a shotgun formation, and then the quarterback, the running back shift over, so the running back is behind center. The running back takes the snap and then hands it to the quarterback, who then runs like he's going to run and then circles back into the pocket and chucks it deep to a guy who was wide open. Now, of course, it was Deshaun Watson. A throw came up about 15 yards short of where it should have been, but the guy was wide open. And I think it's clear that he's a guy who's willing to do things in an unorthodox way, which, if things are going to be different with this New England offense. Will they be better? I don't know, but they'll be exciting in that they're different, at least for this season. I liked seeing that. And the other guy who's rumored to be coming in, Ben McAdoo, here, is somebody who's been known for kind of being overly vanilla on offense. And I think there's something to be said about having the experimental guy with the vanilla guy as his advisor to kind of telling him when to rein it in. And, you got the Browns and Van Pelt with a run-first offense. McAdoo has always had, these pass-first offenses, except for that one season in Carolina. So they're opposites in a lot of ways. And as long as they got a good relationship and work well together, I can see a world where that's a really fortuitous pairing.
Yeah, and it will be interesting because we can only look at what Van Pelt's running in Cleveland, what he's running in Green Bay. He could kind of come in here and change some things around and have his own ideas that maybe Kevin Stefanski wasn't a fan of in Cleveland. So, I mean, Matt, I agree with you. Like, really diverse run game. They can hit the outside stuff, and then they kind of took what Sean McVay has done and started going some more of that downhill and counter with that. They looked for the explosives off play action, but that's, again, what he showed us in Cleveland. So maybe we get out on the practice fields. We won't know till spring, and then really not even till the summer. And it could look probably not completely different, but it could have its own little spin on it. And definitely if Ben McAdoo it comes in here, maybe he has, some of his own parts of his offense that he implements to this thing. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned in there too, the way they get like the explosives in the running game and the way they'll hammer between the tackles. One of the things that stood out to me there is it seemed like he was really good at putting like tight ends in position to block, where even if you aren't a good blocker, you can get successful blocks. Like they had a play in there where you got their tight end motions into the backfield to be a fullback, and then it's a power play with the fullback leading and the guard coming behind him, and he gets a clear shot to the second level against the weak side linebacker, and he's got the advantage. He's got the leverage. He's on the inside, the linebacker's on the outside. All he has to do is hit him with a full head of steam, make sure he hits that inside shoulder so the guy's boxed out, and it's an easy block for him. And then the guard can come behind and, hit the bigger linebacker and make things happen. And then right after that, they dial up the same look, but it's play action, and the tight end is sneaking out for a pass look, and they ended up, I think it was a dagger concept to get a receiver wide open. Yet again, Deshaun Watson came up short on the throw, which was a theme going through this. But, using that to get good looks for your blockers and then turning that into even more wide open looks for your receivers, which they need.
Hey, listen, Watson may have had a tough year throwing the ball, but he's a fantastic human being. And so I can't believe he said that. I really can't. I mean, I know he's got to say something like that, but holy crap. I was like, Jesus Christ, Joe Brady.
Well, and the way he phrased it was even worse too. Ken Dorsey, because it wasn't
Ken
just
Dorsey.
like
Joe Brady.
Because it wasn't just like, oh, like we all know he's a good person. It was something it was from everything I've heard about him. He's a really quality human being, which is even worse.
Yeah,
because that's like
really
that's
bizarre.
just
who the hell are you talking to?
Really. Like if you're gonna say he's a good person, say, hey, I got to meet him and he seems like a great young person. And it's like, oh, it's just based on my experience with him. But no, you're basing it off of everybody else's experiences with him.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. So, anyways, look, and I think what it does, and we'll know, we don't know for sure what the situation is, but for me, keeping Covington at defensive coordinator, and now they added I already blanked on the kid's name that they just brought in from Green Bay, the defensive line coach.
Jerry Montgomery.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Who Rashawn Gary had some great things to say about him when he left. And so, you bring him in, but for the most part, you're keeping that continuity on defense. You don't need to overhaul the defense. You need some more pieces in there, but you want to keep the defense primarily pretty much the same. The offense, you needed a complete overhaul. And so you brought in Alex Van Pelt. I was very nervous they were going to bring Josh McDaniels back. They were going to run it back with Mac Jones. They could still run it back with Mac Jones, but I don't think they're going to. But I think if they had brought in Josh McDaniels, that would have been a sign that they were willing to do that. And they need to just start over offensively. And there's going to be growing pains, and it's not going to be perfect, and people aren't going to be excited about it. But I'm willing to trust them for a year or two to see if they can get it to where they want it to go. Because we just need a change from the last few years. It's been a disaster the last 2 years. And so, so we'll see how it goes. But I think they're doing the right thing in overhauling the offense and trying to mostly stay the same on defense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And part of that overhaul, and Matt, you were just talking about the tight ends where, all three of their tight ends, Hunter Henry, Pharaoh Brown, and Mike Gesicki, are free agents, right? So you knew something was going to have to happen in that room. And watching some of this, Cleveland, the games from last year, David Njoku was such a big piece of their room. And I don't know if you want Hunter Henry in that role but you might seriously start moving tight end up. You guys are doing these mock drafts. You might have to start, I don't know if Brock Bowers is too rich, trading back in the first round for Bowers, but someone like Jatavian Sanders, and we'll get into more of these prospects later, but that tight end spot is so big in that offense. So that might be something that kind of moves up their board here in the next few months.
Well, the other name I think to watch is Shaheem Bell, the Florida State guy, because he's just a super, I don't know exactly, he's listed as a tight end. He kind of does everything out there. And, he's one of those guys in a scheme like this, I think they could protect him as a blocker in his weaknesses and find ways to get him in space with the ball where he's at his best. And that's Van Pelt. There's all kinds of reps with, running backs lining up out wide and tight ends lining up in the backfield and wide receivers lining up in line blocking like their tight end. They'll put guys anywhere out there. So I think some of those versatile tight ends who maybe we wouldn't have considered in New England in the past because they weren't good blockers may now be on the radar a little bit more.
Yeah, Jatavian Sanders is the guy that really kind of resonates with me. I think, and there's some question marks with him, of course, but just a physical athlete that he is can do a lot of those things. And again, isn't the best blocker in the world, but there's a little bit of risk involved, but I wouldn't mind taking a guy like that, in the second. I don't know if he'll drop to the third, but maybe in the second round, if you move back in the first, when I don't want to get too far in the weeds, with the draft where it's February 2nd, right? February 5th, right? But if you trade back and draft a tackle and then get pick up an extra pick in the second round, then you get 2 second-round picks and so on and so on and so on. So, there's chances abound for a bunch of guys. I like Ben Sinnott was in my last mock draft who I like a lot.
Yes,
so
love him.
You want to get guys that are versatile and can do a bunch of different things. And so I think there are a decent amount of guys like that in the draft. Of course, no one does it like Brock Bowers, but you're going to have to take a top 15 pick to take Brock Bowers and maybe even a top 10 pick. And I don't know. Of course, Taylor Kyles just tweeted out today, I keep doing this thing where I just have the Patriots trade back and draft Brock Bowers. And I'm like, well, it might not be the worst idea in the world. But we'll see. And like you say, if they're going to use the tight end as much as they used it this year in Cleveland, it may not be the worst idea to get a guy like that because he's going to be the focal point of your offense. So we'll see. But anyways, all right. So let's take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. We're doing early this time. We're actually on time. Usually we're supposed to do around 20 minutes. We usually do around 35. Take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to review the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. I want to talk, Brian, I know you have a list of guys. I want to go through the list of guys you got. Matt, you got a list of guys. I got a list of guys. So we want to talk about the guys that we have on our list, who's rising up draft boards, who's falling down draft boards, and where we go from here. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back to discuss that. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks. For me, it's got to be the buffalo chicken dip. That's my #1 with the Fritos. Come on now. And placing some super bets as well. My #1 bet of the weekend, offensive lineman to score a touchdown, because that's just hilarious. That would be incredible. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and present and in Mass. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. gamblinghelpma.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it safe from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. All right, we are back. All right, Brian. So who caught your eye? I guess we can start with one or two guys. Who really caught your eye the most at either the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl? Just open it up to everything that happened this past week. Who's like the #1 and #2 guy? You're like, holy crap, that guy's better than I thought he was going to be.
You want to start local? Ready? UNH.
Yes.
Hill and Lobby.
Yes.
There was if you watch them at all at UNH, which I don't know how many people did, but they use this guy like all around the field. I think he had like 11-12% of his snaps in the slot. He's a pass catcher, and he's a running back, but he's a pass catcher, and that's what this team has needed since James White has retired, right? And he's from UNH, so you want to see down at the Senior Bowl, how does he fare against better competition, right? He's going against some of the top defenders in the country, and he held up, and he was awesome. He was, the burst with the ball in his hands, the route running, held up in pass pro. He was really awesome. So I think maybe the 4th round pick for the Pats might come in like 110, 115 range, depending on the comp picks. I wouldn't rule that out. I think that could be in range anywhere from that point on. And I mean, that's such a player that they've missed. So I would love that. And then like any of these wide receivers, they had an awesome week. And I'll go Roman Wilson. He also got a lot of hype online. Matt, you're a Michigan man, right? So you've seen a lot of Roman Wilson. I just love those short, kind of shifty slot receivers. And he's not a pure slot like a Demario Douglas, but he can move out to the Z. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty in the run game across the middle of the field. But just guys who can create separation with ease like that, and that's what he did. He was pretty uncoverable in one-on-one. So Roman Wilson was, on my list already going into the week, and he only confirmed the positive things I thought about him.
I love it.
Yeah, he's good. And he's, we talk about JJ McCarthy being a difficult evaluation. Everybody in that Michigan passing game is, because there's so few true dropbacks against good defenses. And it's just not super high volume. So, Roman Wilson's production doesn't look anything spectacular. But Brian, I'm not sure if you saw it earlier today, but Lance Zierlein actually had Roman Wilson going in the first round in his mock draft today, sneaking in right at the end. So, I like him. There's some Julian Edelman in his game, I think, too, because the feistiness he plays with. There's a video going around on Twitter today of him blocking some guy. And that's
pancaking.
Big time Edelman. I got a pair of receivers here that stood out to me. I'll just go off of that. I like Jamari Thrash and Brendan Rice. Thrash from Louisville, Rice from USC. I think they're both projects a little bit still at this point in their careers, but I think you saw the athleticism translate really well. They got the size, speed, acceleration, agility that you want at the position. And, they showed they could win one-on-ones and they could make some plays in there. Thrash in particular as an athlete reminds me of the guys Green Bay has this year. They just have a whole bunch of those guys who are smooth athletes and nobody who's going to be truly elite on their own, but guys who can consistently win one-on-one. That's kind of what Thrash looks like. He just has issues with his hands right now. And Brendan Rice, inconsistent, but a little bit of Nico Collins to his game. Almost, he's bigger bodied. And then I want to go over to the defense here too. Cam Hart, the corner from Notre Dame, he stood out.
Somebody mentioned him. Somebody mentioned him here in the chat earlier.
He hits hard. Well, and they mentioned right at the top of the Senior Bowl, you can't blitz in it. And like the next play, it's Cam Hart in the backfield breaking something up. Yeah. And he just he read something coming, flew up and made a tackle. He hits hard. Would not be shocked to see him.
He's going to dominate the combine too. So he's on, the freaks list that the Athletic does in the preseason. He was on it. I think he squats 500 pounds. He can do 40 pull-ups. He can hit 23 miles an hour. So
it's crazy.
Running. So he's going to be a combine warrior. But yeah, he had an awesome week. And Brendan Rice was interesting because, he's 6'3", and the first day he's out there and he's winning like you'd kind of expect a 6'3" receiver to win with physicality, top of the route. And then the next 2 days he comes out and, he's creating separation and he's winning that way. So Daniel Jeremiah kept throwing – I like Nico Collins, but Daniel Jeremiah kept throwing Michael Pittman as a comp out there, and that's someone who we've all been saying the Patriots should throw money at if he hits free. So he's definitely an interesting kind of mid-round guy there at that position.
Can I throw a negative out here while we're talking about the receivers? Because I thought there was only one receiver where I thought stood out in a negative way, and that was Tez Walker. He was
a million passes.
Yeah, drops were an issue for him. Separation was an issue. It just kind of felt like every time the announcers were calling his name in the game, something bad was happening too. And, you see that a little bit on tape at UNC. He's inconsistent there, and his good plays are really good, but also he was the only guy of value in that offense not named Drake May, and it showed when he was out there. So definitely not a polished product there. He has the athletic traits, but struggled at times to get open, and when he was open, he was dropping the ball. So I think I've seen some people call him a second round pick coming into this thing, and to me, he looks like a day 3 guy from what we saw.
Yeah, I agree. So just 2 notes on your 2 guys, Brian. Wilson, he's not the same guy as David Givens, but David Givens, he just reminds me of David Givens because he's coming from an offense that just didn't throw the ball. Notre Dame just refused to throw the ball when he was there. And so he's this guy that had very limited production at Notre Dame and, ended up being a 7th round pick because of it, but was actually a good receiver, just never got a chance. Right. And so Wilson might be that same type of guy that David Givens was. And again, he's not going in the 7th round because they do it a little differently than they did it back then. But nevertheless, that's there. So, and Lobby I had on my mock draft this last week. Of course, I had him going in the 6th round, which I was like, there's almost no chance after he performs this week that he's going to end up here. But I was like, he's available now. I'll throw him in there. To your point, he had 117 catches the last 2 seasons combined. So he's just a receiver out of the backfield, and they could really, really use that. So
returns punts too, I think.
Yeah, guy does everything, which is cool. So
football player.
A few guys for me. I mean, Ladd McConkey seems like an obvious one. The guy just dominated and was kind of the talk of the bowl. Some under the radar guys. Tyler Guyton, of course, not under the radar, but another guy who's helped his draft stock. I feel like he's more of a right tackle than a left tackle. So I don't know if he's really a guy the Patriots should focus on if they re-sign Mike Onwenu. But if they don't, he's a guy that they could target, late in that first round, early second round area. But three guys who are kind of under the radar guys at interesting positions. One interior defensive lineman, Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa, played well this week, I thought. Did a nice job in his one-on-ones. Bo Limmer, who's an interior offensive lineman from Arkansas, who was going up one-on-ones against Sweat, dude, and was holding his own against, giving up 50, 60 pounds. And so
there was one rep he got put on his butt, but I thought I was with you. I thought he held up pretty well.
Yeah. There was one, was it Brandon Thorne and Dane Brugler were talking about how much they love seeing him going up against Sweat. And so, of course you're not gonna win every rep, as you say, right? But I was happy about that. And then the other guy is Dadrian Taylor Demerson from the Shrine Bowl, Texas Tech guy, safety. Looks like he's going to fill that kind of hybrid safety role. I don't know if the Patriots are going to want another guy like that, but if they don't bring back Kyle Duggar, which they might not, they should, but they might not, he could be a guy that could be an interesting pick for them. Again, these are under the radar guys. These are probably going to be day 3 guys, maybe the end of day 2, but probably day 3 guys. But I thought that they helped their draft stock significantly at the 2 bowls. And Thad mentions Luke McCaffrey, who, genes alone, dude, I'd be happy drafting that guy, anywhere from the 3rd round down or whatever,
Him and Brendan Rice, and call it a day. And you have
right.
one of them.
Yeah, exactly. See, there you go,
And Marvin Harrison Jr. too. And
Yeah.
we'll take
right. Draft all 3 of them.
One of them.
When I think you look at, as a Patriots fan, you look at this and you're trying to remake the receiver room, and I don't know, you look at the draft and it's like, are we even going to spend in free agency? Will it be worth it? You feel like you could draft 2 Pro Bowl level receivers potentially out of this class. And that's maybe even if you don't use your number 3 overall pick on one. You could draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and you hit on the right guy on day 2 or day 3, plus what you've got in Pop Douglas. And you could turn this from one of the worst receiving cores in the league to top 10 unit in a 2-3 year span here, assuming everything goes right.
Yeah.
I think the big winner overall is depth at wide receiver, depth at tackle, I think.
Yeah.
Which is good news.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Now,
yes, very good news.
Because was it Javon Foster? Is that the guy from Mizzou? He had one rep he had. It's just like 2 rhinos going at it or something. Like, physical.
Yeah. So he was someone I wanted to watch because I think he went into the week projected maybe 4th round pick in that range. I thought he had a good year for Missouri. And you're right. He had a really good week. One-on-ones, Daniel Jeremiah kept talking about once he gets his hands on you, it's over. That rep is over. And he translated it to the team drills too. He caved in the left side of the line a few times. And he is a left tackle, right? A lot of these guys we're talking about are right tackles. So I thought Javon Foster was an interesting one to watch if they, double dip at the position, or maybe they just wait until later day 2 at the position. Again, we'll see what happens, but he definitely had a good week.
Yeah. And I want to tie this back into the offensive coordinator thing real quick. And, the future of this offense, quarterback is kind of the biggest question mark here for New England over the next really decade. That's the next thing you have to figure out. But I think you look at the types of offensive linemen you find in the depth in this draft are guys who are all right pass blockers, really good run blockers. They're tough, they're physical. And then I think you look at the college level, and a Michigan team that just won the national championship did it by running the ball through your face. And their biggest weakness offensively was pass blocking at the tackle spots. And they were able to completely get around that by, controlling situations, controlling the clock, running the ball. But then you look at what Alex Van Pelt brings in, and I think in the short term, the best solution here for New England might be to say, hey, we're going to focus on running the ball and having receivers that are talented enough to make plays happen in the passing game when we do have to pass in those limited times. And we're going to fix the tackle issue by, we're not going to get an elite pass blocker there, so we're not going to try it. We're going to get really good run blockers, and we're going to control the ball, control situations, and we're going to make sure that we're not in third and longs very often. So the fact that our guys aren't elite pass blockers doesn't come up that much. And that's kind of how you play in the short term while you're figuring out your quarterback, while you're looking for a guy who can be your franchise left tackle. I think that, as we see defenses getting lighter across the board, might be your zig when everybody else is zagging approach to this whole thing.
It's interesting. It's an interesting take on it. I don't hate it. And again, it makes sense based on where Alex Van Pelt came from, right? And where he's coming from. And as Brian said, you mentioned it, right? We don't know for sure if he's going to take all that stuff, right? He's never been the guy, right? So we don't know, but we just have to go on what we've seen. And it seems as though he favors those types of theories. So you mentioned quarterback, Matt. Let's talk about it. I thought, man, the Senior Bowl quarterback play was just dreadful. I mean, dreadful. And it wasn't as bad throughout the week, I didn't think. But the game itself was just like almost unwatchable. I mean, the interception that Sam Hartman threw was like, what in the world are you looking at? Right? And then the interception right before him, who was the one that was it? It wasn't Milton that threw it right before him, was it?
Yeah.
It was back to back. It was Milton, right? In the end zone. But it was just like, what in the world are these people looking at? And it was bad. It was real bad.
And those are two experienced quarterbacks,
right.
Veterans who are making mistakes like that. That's what this QB class looks like. I did think it was interesting. I don't remember if it was Daniel Jeremiah or Lance Zierlein who mentioned that apparently the footballs they had this week for the Senior Bowl weren't very good. They were incredibly slippery, and that was an issue for the quarterbacks adjusting to that. So I don't know how much that plays into it, but Bo Nix did not look very accurate. Michael Penix, I thought, actually looked pretty good, but didn't play in the game. And Spencer Rattler may be the only guy in there whose stock really rose, but that's, we're talking from a 6th-round pick to a 4th-round pick kind of thing there on day 3. Underwhelming, I thought. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I thought the word of the week, like the week of practices, was just fine, right? Like it wasn't anything to write home about, but like Bo Nix struggled the first 2 days, and which was kind of concerning because they were working more of that short game, right? And that's where he kind of thrives. But I thought he got a little more comfortable as the week went on, led a touchdown drive in the game. Penix just didn't really do much, honestly. I don't know if that was part of, like he said, I'll come, but I'm not going to, do too much. I'm going to talk to teams and just not practice much. He obviously didn't play, but yeah, I thought Rattler was, I guess, the winner of the group. But, as Matt said, it was like, that's going to bring him from a 6th to a 4th-round pick. But I thought what you wanted to see with him was his kind of decision-making. He had a really bad pick the first day, but other than that, it was a pretty clean week, had a couple nice throws, and perfect in the game. He won MVP. He only played like 2 drives, but that's all it took out of that quarterback position on Saturday. But he looks, we were talking about it, he looks short out there too. He's like 6'1", 6 feet. I don't know why he looked so short at South Carolina, but also just something to watch there with him.
Listen, it's a good point. And I do wonder, because I was kind of all in on, not all in, but I was kind of thinking like, hey, what if we, drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. or trade back for, a tackle, and then we address quarterback later on in the draft, right? And I was thinking Quinn Ewers was the guy that I had in mind. A work in progress, needs work, isn't ready yet. He went back to school, which I find so interesting because, and this is a whole nother discussion, but like he went back to school and Arch Manning is just sitting there. Like he's going to battle out with Arch Manning. What does that say about Arch Manning? But nevertheless, but Rattler's a guy that, like, if you draft, let's just say you trade back to, 7 or 8 or whatever, and, you draft Joe Alt or Fashanu, right, at 8, you get your left tackle of the future. Then in the 2nd round, maybe you have 2 second-round picks now. You draft a wide receiver and a corner, let's say, and then in the 3rd round, you take, whatever, whoever it is, right? Let's say you hit some of those big positions, right, that you need. So you're drafting a left tackle, you're drafting a wide receiver that you think could be a stud day one, or at least a contributor day one. could you then draft a guy like Spencer Rattler in the 4th round, knowing that, to do this, I think you have to sign a guy like Jacoby Brissett. You have to sign someone that can come in and start in the interim, a bridge quarterback, but a guy that can be, a mentor in the room. And I think Brissett is the perfect guy for that. He's a free agent this year. He's worked with Van Pelt in the past. He's been on the Patriots before. I think everything lines up to me perfectly for a guy like Jacoby Brissett. And I wouldn't hate the idea of taking a guy like Spencer Rattler in the 4th round and just seeing what you get. And he might suck in the NFL, but he has elite level traits. And so I don't mind taking a chance on that. And then in the meantime, you're getting an elite left tackle and a really good wide receiver, and you're getting a guy that has elite level traits, a quarterback that might turn into something and might not, but he could turn into something. And I think that's kind of, I don't have a problem with that. Now, the issue is if you don't hit on him, quarterback next year looks a little dicey, but then again, quarterback, who knows, right? You never know what's going to happen this year. Maybe Quinn Ewers takes a big step forward. Maybe Shedeur Sanders becomes that guy that's going to go top 5 and everyone's, super high on him. So I think that, I wouldn't hate that. I'm curious about I'm a little long-winded there, but I'm curious about your thoughts on that, Brian.
I mean, I'm only trading out of 3 if I'm not sold on like one of these or all 3 of these, whatever quarterback is there at 3. Like if I'm sold on that guy, I'm probably picking my quarterback and taking that. But if they're not confident in one of those guys, I'm definitely intrigued by moving down and adding draft capital, because I think that's kind of an underrated thing this year. Is what did they have, 7 picks? They're not getting any comp picks, right? Like they don't have a lot of ammunition. So if you can get another top 50 pick, maybe even if you can get a first next year, I think that would be a really good route to go. And then, maybe, get a quarterback day 3. I'm not interested in like a bridge guy on day 2, probably. I think that might just be a waste with these tackles and wide receivers that are there. But
I agree.
Yeah, if you could sign Jacoby Brissett and then maybe a Spencer Rattler or Michael Pratt is there in round 5, I don't think that would be a bad way to kind of construct your room for a year and build up the rest of your roster elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm only going quarterback like after maybe round 5, but I really don't like the depth at the quarterback in this draft.
Yeah.
Like I'm not interested in guys who've been in college for 4, 5, 6 years who still have this many question marks about who they are. I think that's really low reward propositions. And at least in the first 4 rounds, I think there's so many good skill talent guys. There's offensive players there. I think it's just hard to like. I wouldn't pass up on Dylan Lobby to take Spencer Rattler.
Right.
I'm just not going to do it. So I think if the quarterback you like is there at 3, you take him. Otherwise, I think you probably just focus on building up the offense and figure things out. And I think you should go into the draft having a quarterback you feel can start next year for you. If that's Jacoby Brissett, if that's Baker Mayfield, if that's an option here, or insert any veteran of your choice into that sentence. Because there's no guarantee they come away with a quarterback from the draft. And even if they do, there's no guarantee he is ready to start right away. And then even with that, you want to have a quality backup. I don't think we're counting on Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi to be even a backup quality guy next year from what we've seen in the NFL. So I think in an ideal world, you want to sign one, draft one. At quarterback, just the drafting one is hard with, I think, how weak this particular class. I know people love this quarterback class, but outside of, everybody has huge red flags in this draft. I feel like compared to other guys, Caleb Williams, for a guy who's going to go number 1 overall, it seems, has some big red flags with turnover concerns. Drake May is still very good, but very much a project. Jaden Daniels is a 5-year starter coming out who didn't break out until his 5th year. JJ McCarthy is, a blank canvas that you can project anything you want onto. And then Bo Nix and Michael Penix, who, maybe in the second, but Lance Zierlein has the Patriots trading up to pick 30 from pick 34 to take Bo Nix after passing on Drake May at 3 for Marvin Harrison Jr., which I thought was interesting. He seems convinced that Drake May is going to slide from what he's been talking about, and he's usually pretty plugged in, so I'm going to be monitoring that.
Yeah. That's a really good question here from Old Man Mob. Could the Pats double dip on QBs? Now, I don't know the last time this happened. I think the last time this happened was Washington when they did it with RG3, and then they did it again with Kirk Cousins. And obviously, both of those hit. Now, of course, RG3 ruins his knee and his career's over. But you look at what Kirk Cousins has done in the league, and he's not a superstar necessarily, but he's a top 12 to 15 quarterback, I think, definitively in the NFL, and a guy that I think you can win with maybe. I just don't know how likely that is. Listen, Cousins is a guy that played 4 years at Michigan State and put up okay numbers, but didn't really wow anyone. He had his best year was his last year, right? But didn't really light the world on fire. It is 4 years there. So the difference is that these guys aren't playing 4 years anymore. They're playing 5 years, right? And so that to me is kind of a big difference. But still, I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility.
Well, I think it's tough with Kirk Cousins too, because he took 6 or 7 years in the NFL before he got to be, the guy who he is now. And I don't think there's a guy as good a prospect as Cousins that'll be there on day 4, or as good a prospect as RG3 was, who may be there at 2, let alone at 3. So I don't know, Brian. I'll let you go here.
Yeah, I don't think you can rule anything out at this point, but I would kind of, again, going back to, first of all, the depth isn't great, right? As we just talked about, who are you picking on day 3 to double dip? And also, again, they only have 7 picks. So you have so many needs to kind of fill. Can you use 2 picks on one spot there, unless you trade back a bunch and you have a bunch of these late rounders? I just don't know. So maybe if you want to take a shot at Joe Milton and his bazooka arm on, with the last pick in the 7th round, and just see what happens there. But I just don't see the scenario there. It's just a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you, Brian, about trading back too. I think that's probably wise. Even if they don't trade back from 3, I think trading back from 34 definitely has some value. And then I think in some ways, if you could trade back from 34, pick up an extra pick in next year's draft, and then, go package your 3rd round pick with your 6th round pick and move up a little bit. From what I've heard, these 6th and 7th may not be that good this year. There's not a lot of depth in this draft. So I think if you can find ways to move up the board from the back to the middle this year, and also move from the front this year back a little bit and pick up extra capital next year, I like the idea. That said, I do have a hard time trading back if Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board for you at 3. I think he's a tough guy to pass on.
Yeah. The hardest thing for me is that you're sitting there at 3 and asking yourself, who do you really believe in, right? If the Bears are keeping Justin Fields and they move back with Washington, right? Of course, Cliff Kingsbury gets hired by Washington. All the speculation, immediately jumps on. They're going to try to move up and get Caleb Williams. If they do that and the Bears keep Justin Fields and take Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2, now you're sitting there asking the question, do you believe that Drake May or Jaden Daniels are our future superstar, right? Are they the franchise quarterback you're looking for? And if they're not, then I think you have to trade back, right? I just don't see the value in taking a starting left tackle at 3. And I understand it's happened before, right? Jake Long went number 1 overall. Eric Fisher went number 1 overall, right? All these years ago. But it's when there's the amount of talent that there is on the board right now at the skill positions, you're talking about 3 quarterbacks that some people will view as superstars. You're talking about a generational wide receiver. You're talking about a perhaps generational tight end, right? And so there are people that will value those guys. To me, it's you move back and you take one of those 2 tackles, and maybe Alt is everyone's favorite, but Fashanu is pretty damn good too. So if you draft one of those guys, if you move back to 7 or 8, one of those guys is going to be available, right? And so you pick up a 1st round pick next year, maybe pick up a 2nd or 3rd round pick this year, and you give yourself more ammunition and more throws at the dartboard. But like you said, Brian, and you pointed this out, Brian, and Matt, you said the same thing. If you believe in a guy, don't overthink it. Just friggin' draft him. Just do it. I don't care about the draft picks. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. The draft picks are irrelevant. If you believe that guy is there, you take him at 3. And that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And if May's there, I would definitely run that card up. Jaden Daniels, I'm still not like 100. Like I'm not sprinting that card up like I am with Drake May right now, but I'm still probably taking him. But the option of trading down has really been growing on me. And again, we're here February 5th, right? So much is going to change over the next 2.5 months. But yeah, if it goes Caleb Williams and it goes Drake May, and you have a team like, Antonio Pierce is sitting back there, and he's might give you 3 first rounders to move from 13 to 3. And we just talked about all the depth of these tackles and these wide receivers, and you could even then move back up from 13 and get maybe a Joe Alt or an Olu Fashanu or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. There's so many good guys. So if again, we keep saying if you believe in the quarterback, take him, turn that card in, but it's pretty enticing to get some future first and some extra capital if that's not your move with the depth that all these other positions of need.
Yeah, it's a great call. Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing here is going to be, looking at what the trade market actually looks like. It takes 2 to tango. And I think the Patriots might find themselves in kind of the unlucky position of being, if they don't like any of the quarterbacks there at 3, there's a couple teams there that aren't picking quarterbacks. And the issue they may have is, why are the Raiders going to trade up all the way to 3 for a quarterback if they think they can wait until pick 5, make the trade there, and do it just a little bit cheaper than they were doing it. So,
right,
that's what I worry about for New England. Again, the prize here, if the trade back doesn't work out, is Marvin Harrison Jr., which is I think a very, very nice. That's a soft landing if you don't get a quarterback and you can't trade back.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the other teams that are in front of the Raiders, right? There are other teams that will move up. And so if you're the Patriots and you're actually looking to move out of 3, there are going to be teams that want to get up there, right? Whether it's Atlanta, whether it's, who's at 6?
6 is the Giants.
The Giants.
I don't think they are.
Probably
They're stuck
not
on Daniel Jones.
Right. But, so you get in that situation where you look at it and say, someone's going to move up for a quarterback if that's the case.
Well, I think the interesting team here is Minnesota too. They reportedly were going all in for Anthony Richardson last year. And, let's say Kirk Cousins walks out that door and he's somewhere else. I could see the Vikings being very aggressive to move up and take a quarterback, which is interesting. And that puts you back at 11, which I think is a little bit tough because you may not get, any of the top 3 receivers, any of the top 2 tackles, or Brock Bowers at that spot. You're still going to get somebody you like. But, you can trade back and trade back up if.
Well, right. Yeah. Look what, Miami did when they made the Trey Lance pick. And Brian, you just mentioned it, right? You move back, you pick up 3 first-round picks to do it, or I guess 2 extra first-round picks to do it. And then you use one of your first-round picks to move up back to 6 and take, they took Jalen Waddle, but you move back up to wherever it is you want to go and take a guy there. So, there are endless possibilities for the Patriots. I do think, if you believe in the quarterback, you take the quarterback. But then, if you don't, or if you feel like there's value somewhere else and you want to do, you mentioned Kirk Cousins could be somewhere else. Maybe Kirk Cousins is here right now. I don't know if he'd want to sign here, but maybe you sign Kirk Cousins here and you say, all right, we're going to go out and we're going to get Kirk Cousins and we're going to sign, Calvin Ridley maybe, and we're going to, whatever the case may be, and bring back Kendrick Bourne and, and then we're going to move back in the draft, and when we move back, we're going to draft Fashanu or Alt. And so now we have our, cornerstone left tackle. We have a quarterback that we feel like can be successful in this offense. And then we draft a wide receiver in the 2nd round. And so, again, there's so many possibilities with the immense amount of cap space they have, with the draft capital that they have. And again, Brian, you mentioned they're not getting any comp picks, which is tough, but they have a high 1st-round pick, a high 2nd-round pick, and that high 2nd-round pick, because of the rotation, because the 3 teams tied record-wise, the rotation is that the Patriots are in the middle first, and then they get that first pick of the 3-team rotation. So they're going to be the second pick of the second round. That's a valuable pick to move. And so, that was the pick that Will Levis was taken at last year, that Tennessee moved up to take him. So that's a valuable pick that the Patriots could move back from and pick up some extra draft capital. So, and stay at 3 and draft the guy they want. So, there's so many possibilities, but I think the big thing for me is like, and it sounds easy. It's, you make it sound easy, right? But it's like, just draft the right guy. It doesn't matter where you take him. Who cares where you take him? You have to be confident in your evaluation to draft the correct guy. You cannot miss in this draft. It's way too important for this team.
Yep. Yeah, they don't have a lot of picks, but they have valuable picks, right? So it'll be interesting. And just on that trade, wasn't it Arizona last year? Didn't they go 3 to 12, and then they moved 12 to 6, and they got Paris Johnson?
Exactly.
So the president's there, and that was a team moving up, not even for a quarterback. Texans moved up for Will Anderson, so you could probably get even more than what they got if there's a bidding war for Jaden Daniels between Minnesota, Denver, and Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. So you could definitely get a haul there.
That's a good point.
I also think the wild card here is, if Lance Zierlein is correct and the NFL just isn't that high on Drake May, Jaden Daniels goes too. And, what happens if, we all like Drake May on film, but there's other things there that make him drop, how that situation could unfold. We got a lot of time between now and the draft for things to change. These boards are going to be moving over the next almost 3 months here. So, we'll see.
Well, I mean, remember Geno Smith? Geno Smith was like a guaranteed top 10 pick who fell out of the first round, right? And so, obviously it turned out that he wasn't very good right away, but Malik Willis, same thing. Malik Willis was getting talked. I mean, our buddy Phil Nystrom was saying he should go top 5.
You just said Levis, kind of same thing, right? There was talk about he would go 4 last year to Indy, and then he slips all the way there into the 30s. So
right, yep. So
I think that's we'll see what Jaden Daniels looks like, but I think if we're talking about quarterbacks who can slide, I think anybody except for probably Caleb Williams, because it seems to lock the number 1 spot.
Yeah,
any of these guys are candidates to slide, because we're in the part of the draft process right now where everybody looks good. The next couple of months, usually it's everybody's doing things. It's a pro day with your own receivers on your own field, or you're at the combine in shorts running, or you got nice fancy interviews and you got guys hyping you up, and for the most part, they're not going to be talking you down. So everybody's going to get talked up for the next 3 months.
Unless you bomb your S2 cognition test or whatever.
Yes.
Or you don't bomb it and they release the wrong score. That can also happen.
Scored it incorrectly.
But for the most part, it's going to be favorable, and that doesn't because it's that way publicly. That doesn't mean that's how teams actually are seeing it, and that's
exactly. Old Man Mob just commented. I threw it up on the screen, but imagine MHJ, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake May. Drake May drops into the 20s and the Patriots move up. I mean, so
that'd be wild.
Of course, I mean, who knows, right? But yeah, that'd be wild. Is a good way to put it. So
yeah, but I also saw a comment back there. Somebody mentioned Cam Ward as a day 3 guy. He actually went back to school, so he's going back for another year, and he was the guy a lot of people liked.
Cam Ward went back to school. Weren't we talking about Cam Ward being at one of the bowl games playing well?
Cam Hart.
I have this wrong. Cam Hart. Yeah, the corner. Yeah,
I got it. Now I got confused. Sorry.
Yeah, it's draft season. It's coach season. There's so many names just flying around these days.
Right.
You said that, Pat, and I was just like, did I completely mess this up?
I'm like, didn't we just talk about him hitting people and stuff?
Yeah. And I think it's notable that in here we basically haven't mentioned any Shrine Bowl guys, and I think that says something about the lack of depth in this draft. There wasn't much notable. No quarterbacks coming out of there or anything to write home about.
No.
Maybe a couple of receivers, maybe a couple tackles. Probably not. Like it's the depth falls off pretty quickly once you get to that point. And I don't know if there's going to be a Pop Douglas sitting there. If you want a receiver who would be like that, you got to go get him probably the 2nd, 3rd round this year. May not find that guy in the 6th.
Yeah. No, it's cool. That's and so we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I thought the Shrine Bowl, was okay, but it was certainly took a backseat to the Senior Bowl this year. Did not have the talent that last year had. Remember, Zay Flowers at the Shrine Bowl last year, so didn't seem like there was quite as much talent there this year. I think a lot of guys will get drafted, just not high, So
Yeah.
So we'll see.
There's Taj Washington. Is that his name from USC?
From USC, yep.
People I think Malik Washington was there too. Who he has a really interesting.
They had good weeks.
Profile.
They're just kind of in that Demario Douglas mold, like shorter, quick slot guys. So I don't know how that's gonna work as maybe a fit for the Patriots there, but
right,
yeah,
you got to think the Patriots are going with a bigger guy. Even like I love Jacob Cowing, but he's a guy that Patriots probably aren't going to be interested in him. He's too little, right? He's he's bigger than Pop, but he's not that much bigger than Pop. And so, you kind of go from there. So,
yeah. And there's a receiver for Oregon State, Anthony Gold, who had a punt return for a touchdown in the game, which is probably the highlight of the whole game. But he is, 5'8", 170. He's a small slot guy. And, if he ends up in New England, he's going to be backup slot receiver, backup punt returner at best. That's where he's going to be starting out.
Yep. That's the way it goes. So, Brian, any other guys you want to mention? Any other guys you're like, we got to talk about this guy before we go?
Well, I'd be upset at myself if I didn't talk about Ricky Pearsall, Florida wide receiver. He's long been one of my favorites. He is just, the best way to describe him is just a baller, right? Like we talk about good football players. Like he's just a good football player every time you watch him. He's, quick. He's a really good route runner. He has unbelievable hands and catch radius. I don't know if you guys saw his one-handed catch highlight earlier this year. I think it was against Charlotte, maybe. He just absolutely stabbed it out of midair. He's awesome. He had a really good week. And he's one of those, we talk about these smaller guys. He's only 6 feet, 6'1", but he kind of plays a little bit bigger. Like if you had to put him at the X and move him around from the X to the Z at times, I think he could handle that because he's kind of he's a physical guy too. So he was awesome.
And he was, I think there's another connect. He was at Arizona State back in 2019, I believe.
Daniels.
Yeah, with Jaden Daniels and behind Brandon Ayuk in that receiving course. If you're drafting Jaden Daniels looking for a receiver to pair with him, there might be some chemistry there.
Yep. Tackles, Javon Foster, we talked about had a good week. Another couple later round guys, Travis Glover, Georgia State. He was like a late ad and he had a good game, just kind of some nastiness to him. Christian Jones from Texas. He was playing right tackle, right guard. I think he went over to left tackle. So another one of those late round guys. There are just a ton of good tackles in this draft, which is encouraging. Tackles, wide receivers. So that's some good news for the Pats. So he had a good week. The one tackle I'd say went kind of down was Jordan Morgan from Arizona. It wasn't solid. There was one team drill, I think on day 2, where he was just in Sam Hartman's lap 3 straight plays at 11 on 11. So that was someone I watched and kind of moved him down the board. But the rest of the tackles had a pretty good week.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I feel like last year it was the depth at tackle was really bad. And this year is the exact opposite. There's a ton of depth at tackles. And some guys that I think, we're going to get drafted in late day 2 or day 3, they're going to be starting this year. And so I think that's a great thing for the Patriots. If they're unable to address tackle at the beginning of the draft, that they can get a developmental guy that can step in, and maybe he's not the starter, but if a guy gets hurt, he might be able to step in. So, that happened to Matt Light's rookie year. Matt Light wasn't starting left tackle. Right tackle gets hurt. He steps in, starts at right tackle. Same exact thing happened to Nate Solder, where Solder steps in and starts at right tackle his rookie year, and they go to the Super Bowl in both of those years. So they're not going to the Super Bowl this year, but that could happen again. So, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that's an interesting look at it for me. That depth is overwhelming, I think, like you say. And I think that's a great thing for the Patriots, who are needy at tackle.
I've also been, with the Van Pelt hire, I know we just said, there's so much depth in the draft, and free agency is kind of weak, right? At the tackle spot, Onwenu and Trent Brown are kind of the top two there. There's Jonah Williams, Tyron Smith if you get down, but Van Pelt was just in Cleveland, and they drafted DeJuan Jones last year at right tackle, and they also have Jack Conklin at right tackle. And I'm blanking on their left tackle's name, but they have a good left tackle. So they have both of Conklin and DeJuan Jones at right tackle, and I thought I saw they wanted to go to DeJuan Jones, who's had a good rookie year, younger player. Maybe like a Jack Conklin shakes free. He's got, I think, 28, 29. He's got 3 years left on his contract. So maybe there's some familiarity there with Van Pelt, and they want to go that route, and they get a veteran in. You can move Onwenu back in the guard, and then you're only looking at one tackle spot in the drafts. So that was just another name, if you want to go a different route there.
On the left tackle there, the guy who was, I think, the backup, but played most of the year, who was also like the swing agent,
I believe, right?
Garen Christian. I don't know if I'm saying the first name correctly. I think he was at least decent, and there's familiarity. And Wheatley, who's already in the building, very much an unknown, but also has familiarity there.
Yeah, of course. And then Jedrick Wills was the left tackle that was hurt for the year, but yes, he's their starting left tackle. So it's fascinating, and there are guys that that could come in, and I'm not on board with the Trent Brown re-signing. I feel like Trent Brown should go. I hope they re-sign Mike Onwenu, but again, and to your point, Brian, he may not want to play right tackle, right? We don't know, and he's never said, right? He doesn't feel comfortable saying it. He never said anything. He never spoke out against it. He just kind of said, hey, yeah, I just go wherever they tell me to go, and I'll whatever is best for the team, and so on and so forth. It didn't sound like he was super excited to play left tackle. Now, maybe he didn't want to shit on them for not putting him at right tackle, right, and leaving him at right guard. I don't know, but if it's a situation where he wants to stay at guard and the Patriots like City So, and they don't want to overpay for Onwenu, I guess I could see them letting him go. He's so good that I'll take the extra depth, especially where you've had problems with Cole Strange staying healthy. I'd rather keep all of those guys in the building than let Mike Onwenu walk, even if he wants to play guard, and we got to play him there.
Yeah, I just want to keep good players in the building, right? And they made this mistake with Joe Tooney a few years ago, and we probably should have criticized them more at that time, but yeah, I want to. You have the money, right? He said he's wanted to be here. Just try to get that done. I still think he's best long term at guard. If they want to keep him at tackle, fine. I think he can do it even in this offense. But Pat, as you said, Cole Strange doesn't stay healthy much. We don't know his injury timeline right now, right? He's hurt. Right. I believe he had surgery. So you have City So. You hope he had a promising rookie year. You have Mike Onwenu and you have Cole Strange whenever he's healthy. Having three guards is it's not a bad issue to have, especially when you have Onwenu who can have that versatility.
Yeah,
and that's
agreed.
And we've been talking about building out the offensive line for so long now. It seems like we've forgotten you have to build out the depth as well. Onwenu is just valuable because for all the reasons you said, and then I think there's also the future at center. We haven't gotten a retirement announcement from David Andrews, so I'm going to assume he's back at this point. We haven't had have we had one for Matthew Slater?
Not yet.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Yeah,
it sounded like he was done, but maybe he isn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I would assume we're going to get one from him. Maybe they're just waiting until after the Super Bowl. But yeah, and I know center will be something to watch going forward. I thought Jake Andrews in very, very limited reps looked good when he played the last week of the season. Better than what Antonio Maffi gave you, at least. So
true. I mean, it was at guard, obviously different position, but still.
Yeah, and I think if you can go into next year with at least a couple bodies on the interior that are healthy and you feel good about, that's a step in the right direction. And you figure out tackle when you figure out tackle. This is going to be a multi-year thing for New England anyway. There's going to be swings and misses in here. It's if you fix everything for next season, that is an absolute miracle of miracles. You're probably if you go into next season needing a tackle and a quarterback, I think you probably still feel good about what happened relative.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on literally everything, and it's similar to what from the 2000 Patriots to the 01 Patriots. Of course, the 2000 Patriots at least had a quarterback, but Bledsoe goes out, Brady comes in, and then it's like, you hit on Matt Light and you hit on all the free agents you bring in, right? David Patton and, Troy
Mike
Brown has the
Vrabel.
best year of his career, and Mike Vrabel and Anthony Pleasant and Bobby Hamilton, and and you go down the list, and it's like the odds of that happening again are insane. And so, like, there's a chance, but it's extremely unlikely that this team is going to compete for the division crown or the playoffs or anything like that. But like, we just want to see the young guys improve and be better than they were before, and then and then you go from there, and you hope that in 2 years you can be fighting for a playoff spot. So. Anyways, well, this has been a lot of fun, Matt. Brian, thank you so much for coming through, man. This has been great. We're going to have to do it again soon. We do have – I'm going to formally invite you right now. It's a busy night for everyone, but I am going to formally invite you. We do a live stream during the draft. We're live the entire first round of the draft on Thursday night, and so you're welcome to come on there whenever you want, for as long as you want. We're live, and people just kind of come in and out as they please. We go all night long. So – you're welcome during that show if you have the time to come on, but we definitely have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. I mean, this draft's going to be weird. We're going to be like done within the first like half hour, unless they trade back up.
Well, that's the crazy part, is that we are going to be done, but then it's like, well, they could trade back, and then if they trade back, now they're drafting a little bit later, and then it's like, if we're sitting there and we're looking at it and we're saying like, oh my God, they're at 34, but like there are a ton of guys on the board that they might like. They could be moving back up into the 20s. So there's going to be a lot of intrigue, even though you're right. They might be done at pick 3, but it's like, well, you never know. We could be sitting on eggshells the whole time, like wondering if they're going to move back up, And
I think we can get to pick 3 and they trade back, and we're going to get you wait, and then you got to. But I do think, I know Pat and I talked about this. I think we're probably going to start the show a little bit earlier this year as a result. We're probably going to do some pre-draft stuff. So, Brian, I'm sure you're going to be doing stuff you're going to have writing and stuff during the draft. If you can't make it then, come by beforehand. And
absolutely.
Man, it's the next 3 months here are going to fly by, but it's every day is also going to be painful, because I'm going to log onto Twitter every day and see the same arguments.
You know what it is, and they talk about this with kids, and it's similar, and so I'll use it because I think it makes sense. That the days are long, but the years are short, right? And we'll use months. The days are long, but the months are short, right? Before we know it, we'll be at draft time, but we'll be sitting there every day on Twitter like, Jesus Christ, just get me to the draft. You know what I mean? But yeah. So Brian, thank you so much. Well, listen, obviously Pat's Pulpit, clearly, hello. Like, if you're not reading Pat's Pulpit, you're offending me and Matt if you're not reading Pat's Pulpit. But Brian's killing it on Pat's Pulpit. And it's I am Brian Hines on Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell people call it now. Anything else to plug? Brian, other than that?
Well, I mean, right here on CLNS, Barth and I do Pats Beat at least 2 times a week. We'll be starting our mock drafts, I'm sure, pretty soon, so that'll be fun. Make sure you tune into that. But yeah, Pats Pulpit.
That's right. That's right. And he's part of the CLNS family as well. I mean, so it's a true crossover where we write for Pat's Pulpit and we podcast for CLNS. It's fantastic. So it's great. So anyways, thanks, Brian. Thanks, Matt. Thank you to the chat. As always, we love you guys, and we will talk to you on Thursday night. Whoa, wait, before we go, Brian, who do you got winning the Super Bowl? Forgot about that.
So I've had a long philosophy that I don't go against Patrick Mahomes as an underdog, but I think I'm going to break that this year. I think I'm leaning the 49ers right now. So I'll lock that in for you guys right now. I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers.
On the record. This is a Brian Hines exclusive right here.
Exactly.
I like it. That's good. I said before, I've said to Matt, and I've said it again, and I will continue to say it. I'm picking the Chiefs. I'm betting on the Chiefs. I'm putting all of my money and all of my apples on the Chiefs. And here's why, right? Obviously, Patrick Mahomes. But I desperately want the Chiefs to lose. If I put money on the Niners and they lose, I'm going to be friggin' pissed. I'm going to be pissed. If I put money on the Chiefs and they win, great. I win some money, like, good. But if they lose, I'm going to be happy. Yeah, I'm going to be out some money, but so what? They're going to be happy they lost. So that's kind of my theory going into it, is like I'm betting against my rooting interests. We'll put it to you that way. So
you'll be happy either way.
That's it. Exactly.
Hedging-
Right. Either I'm happy that the
he's-
Chiefs lost, or I'm happy I made some money.
He's hedging his financial bet against his
That's
emotional bet.
Also, I'm the biggest mush on the face of the planet. So like, it's bad. I'm like the dude from A Bronx Tale. It's just like, if you see me betting on someone, just go the other way. Fade my bets. Anyone that paid attention to my bets this year, I'm running the Patriots conditioning test because my bets were so bad this year. So, that's the way it goes. So, anyways, well, thanks, Brian. Again, we appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys on Thursday night and give you like kind of a full preview of the Super Bowl.